When you finally stopped explaining yourself, something in the air changed. The noise quieted, the storm settled, and for the first time you stood still while everything else around you spun out of control. That silence wasn't weakness, my friends. It was power, wearing the calm face of self-respect. You didn't block them, you didn't beg, you didn't chase. You just disappeared, like fog lifting from a field at dawn. You removed yourself, and suddenly they could see what they'd been blind to all along: your worth. People think silence is nothing. But silence, folks, is a mirror. It reflects back everything the noise tried to hide. When you stopped talking, they were forced to hear the echo of their own actions. It's funny how when you speak, they ignore you, but when you go quiet, every memory, every word, every touch becomes louder in their mind. That's the paradox of silence. It speaks the truth without saying a word, and right now, that truth is haunting them like a shadow they can't escape. They thought your quiet meant defeat. They thought your distance meant you lost. But in reality, it was the moment you reclaimed your peace. You stopped trying to prove your value to people who couldn't see it. You stopped watering dead plants. You let the garden grow without them. And now, my friends, they're the ones standing in drought, realizing they traded gold for dust. They scroll through old messages. They check your last online time. They wonder if someone new has your attention. They'll never admit it, but that silence, your silence, has become the loudest voice in their life. Let me tell you something real. Silence exposes what fake love hides. When you were loud, they had excuses. But now, your calmness forces them to face their own noise. You see, the mind can't handle uncertainty. It needs answers. And when it doesn't get one, it obsesses. That's where they are now, trapped in the loop of what happened. Did I matter? Are they gone for good? They don't realize it yet, but they're finally feeling what you felt all those times they ignored you. That's karma in emotional form, the quiet returning as a storm in their head. So hold your silence with pride. Don't break it to prove anything. Real power doesn't announce itself. It simply is. You are that power now, calm, collected, unbothered, like a mountain that doesn't move for storms. You've learned the art of stillness. And that's what's driving them crazy. They can't shake someone who's not playing their game anymore. You're no longer part of their chaos. You've become the peace they can't disturb. Remember this quote: the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest one. You chose to walk away from noise and stand in peace. That's not losing, that's mastery. And that's what Stoicism is all about. Responding with strength, not reaction. It's about realizing your silence is worth more than any explanation they never deserved. So if you're hearing this and it feels like truth, because it is, stay calm. Don't chase, don't explain, don't even look back. They already feel the emptiness you left. They're panicking quietly, my friends. They miss your energy, your warmth, your calm. They won't say it, but you'll see it soon enough. In the little signs, in the random messages, in their sudden, "How have you been?" But by the time they come back, you'll be too far in your peace to care. That's growth. That's evolution. That's silence doing what words never could. Now pause for a second, my friends. Feel that calm running through you right now. That's your power settling back into place. You've taken back something they can't ever steal again: your peace. This silence isn't emptiness, it's authority. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth without needing to shout it. So I want you to anchor that truth, right here, right now. Go to the comments and write, "My silence speaks volumes." Write it like a declaration, not just words on a screen, because that's your new identity. You're not chasing, you're not explaining, You're leading with stillness. Say it with pride, folks. You're not losing control. You've become control. You've mastered the pause that most people run from. And as you type those words, you're telling the universe that you're done with emotional chaos. You've graduated to peace. That's rare power, and you've earned it. So don't just sit there nodding. Lock it in, smash that like button, subscribe, and stay with me because we're just getting started. What comes next will open your eyes even wider and prove once and for all why your silence isn't weakness. It's the ultimate revenge of self-respect. Number 1. When you stopped explaining, they started obsessing. Every time you used to explain yourself, you were trying to create peace. You just wanted to be understood, didn't you? You thought if you could just make them see your heart, they'd stop twisting your words, stop doubting your intentions, stop making you feel like the problem. But every time you tried to explain, they found new ways to turn your clarity into confusion. You spoke truth, and they used it as ammunition. You were solving, and they were studying your emotions, learning exactly how to keep you trapped in their chaos. But when you finally stopped explaining, everything changed. It's wild how the tables turn when you stop feeding someone your energy. At first, they thought you were just giving them space, that you'd come back around to explain yourself again like you always did. But when you didn't, that's when the silence started eating at them. That's when the obsession began. You see, my friends, control doesn't disappear with anger or shouting. It disappears with peace. When you became still, they had nothing to fight against. And when there's no fight, the mind starts fighting itself. They replayed your words in their head, like echoes bouncing off empty walls. What did they mean by that? Did I go too far? Why aren't they reacting this time? That's the sound of someone who's losing psychological power. Because before, your reactions were their validation, your explanations were their control. But when you stopped explaining, they lost the map. It's like pulling the plug on a game they thought they'd mastered. Suddenly, all their strategies stopped working. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you stopped explaining yourself, you forced them to face their unconscious behavior. Your silence became a mirror they couldn't look away from. Every projection, every manipulation, every guilt trip, they all came flooding back to them, and they couldn't call it fate anymore. They had to call it themselves. Think about it. When you used to explain, you were giving them a sense of superiority. They felt like the judge, and you were the one trying to prove your case. But once you walked away from the courtroom, their robe, their gavel, their power, it all disappeared. Who are they without someone to accuse? Who are they without someone to correct? The truth is, people like that don't crave love. They crave control. And your silence destroyed that illusion of control like a mirror cracking under pressure. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a performer on stage, used to the roar of applause every time they finish their act. But one night, they step out and the crowd is silent. No boos, no cheers, no sound, just stillness. That silence doesn't just confuse them, it terrifies them, because now they don't know where they stand. That's exactly what your silence does. You stopped being their audience, and without you, their performance lost meaning. But I know, my friends, silence isn't easy. It takes strength to stop explaining when your heart still wants closure. It takes power to walk away when your mind still wants them to understand. You might even wonder, what if they think I don't care? Let them. What if they move on? Let them. Because explaining yourself over and over was never bringing you peace. It was only giving them access to your emotional energy. And when you stop feeding that energy, something incredible happens. They start feeding off memories instead. That's when the obsession begins. Now they analyze every message you ever sent, looking for hidden meanings. They check your social media like a detective, trying to see if your silence is personal or powerful. And every time you don't respond, every time you stay calm, every time you choose peace over drama, you teach them a lesson they'll never forget. You were never weak. You were wise, you were aware, and they misjudged your silence as indifference when it was actually emotional mastery. There's something deeply stoic about that moment when you stop trying to change someone and start focusing on your inner stability. That's where freedom lives. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength, and that's what you've done. You've taken your power back from external chaos and placed it where it belongs, within yourself. Your silence, right now, is the purest form of communication. It says, "I don't need to prove who I am. Time will do it for me." It says, "I trust the universe to show what words couldn't." And the more you stand in that calm, the more their mind spirals trying to decode it. That's the irony. They think they broke you, but they're the ones losing sleep. They think you've given up, but really, you've ascended to a level of peace they can't reach. So the next time that urge hits you to send that one last message, to clear your name, to make them understand, pause. Remember, silence is not emptiness. It's evidence. Evidence that you've evolved beyond the noise. And those who used to misunderstand your calm will one day remember your absence as the loudest lesson they ever received. You see, when you stopped explaining, you stopped seeking validation, and the moment you no longer need to be understood, you become untouchable. That's where obsession begins, not when you're chasing love, but when you've learned how to sit quietly in your own power. So breathe, folks. You're not invisible. You're unforgettable. You're not being ignored. You're being studied. You're not losing control. You are control. And one day soon, they'll realize they didn't lose a person. They lost peace. Write this in the comments right now and own it. My silence made them see. Because it did. It's not revenge, it's revelation. And you, my friend, are the living proof that peace is the loudest power of all. Number 2, the silence that screams louder than words. Silence is not emptiness, my friends. It's strategy. It's psychological warfare disguised as peace. You see, when someone can't read you anymore, when they can't predict your next move, their mind begins to work overtime. That's human nature. The mind hates uncertainty. It craves answers, closure, and definition. And when it can't find any, it starts building stories. Stories that almost always circle back to you. That's when your silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. It's not passive. It's haunting. It's that soft, invisible pressure that keeps them thinking long after you've stopped speaking. They used to think they knew how to trigger you. They thought one cold text, one sarcastic reply, or one disappearing act would make you break your composure. But now that you've gone quiet, you've taken away their blueprint. And that drives them insane, because silence leaves space, and in that space their imagination takes control. Every question becomes a ghost. Every guess turns into an obsession. They start wondering, did I push too far? Are they talking to someone else? Have they really moved on? And those thoughts don't come once. They come in waves, especially at night, when their ego finally goes quiet. Think about it. Silence is like a mirror covered in fog. The more they try to wipe it clean and see clearly, the blurrier it gets. That's what's happening in their mind right now. They're trying to understand your silence logically, but silence isn't logical, it's emotional. It reaches into the subconscious where guilt and regret live. It plays their memories on repeat, forcing them to relive every moment they dismissed you, every message they ignored, every time they made you feel unseen. That's how your silence screams. It speaks directly to their conscience. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." That's exactly what's happening to them. They're resisting the truth of who you were, but your silence keeps reminding them they can't escape it. They might post something online, pretend they're unbothered, even fake happiness, but behind closed doors, that silence is thunder in their chest. You've become the unanswered question they can't delete. Let me give you a picture, folks. Imagine walking into a room that's completely still. No sound, no movement, nothing. At first, it feels calm, but wait long enough, and that stillness becomes unsettling. You start hearing your own heartbeat, the hum of the air, the small creaks in the floor. You become hyper-aware of yourself. That's exactly what happens to someone who loses your voice. They start hearing their own guilt louder than ever before. Your silence turns the volume up on everything they tried to suppress. It's powerful because silence removes all your defenses. You're no longer explaining or reacting, and that means they can't manipulate the situation anymore. They're left alone with reality, and that's a tough mirror to face. That's why people say silence can be punishment, but it's not really punishment, it's revelation. It reveals who they are without your energy guiding the story. And now they're realizing, without you responding, without you explaining, they were never in control. They were dependent on your validation all along. And yes, I know it's hard. It's hard not to break the silence when your heart still remembers the sound of their name. It's hard not to reply when you see them watching your stories, liking old posts, or leaving indirect messages that sound like regret. But that's the real test, my friends, the test of emotional mastery. Because silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to protect your peace. You've turned silence into your language now. It speaks wisdom. It says, "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to evolve." It says, "I've outgrown explanations." And while you're healing and rebuilding, they're unraveling under the weight of your calm. They might not show it, but trust me, they hear you loud and clear in every quiet moment they can't escape. So remember this, silence is not weakness, it's awareness. It's emotional gravity, pulling the truth out of those who once tried to hide it. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stay still long enough for the noise to expose itself. Because silence, when used with intention, becomes a roar the world can't ignore. Now write this in the comments to seal it in your soul. My silence speaks truth. Because it does. It's your armor, your message, your proof that you've risen above the chaos. You're not ignoring them, you're mastering yourself. And that, my friends, is how silence wins every battle without saying a single word. Number 3. Your absence became their mirror, and they hated what they saw. Your absence became their mirror, my friends, and for the first time they saw themselves without your reflection, softening their flaws. You see, when you were around, your kindness covered their cruelty. Your understanding made their excuses believable. Your presence made their chaos feel manageable. But once you stepped back, that illusion shattered. Suddenly, there was no one left to blame, no one to project on, no one to absorb the noise they created. And in that quiet emptiness you left behind, they were finally forced to face what they'd become. That's the cruel beauty of absence. It doesn't punish, it reveals. When you walked away, you didn't take their peace. You took away the distraction that kept them from seeing their own dysfunction. You took away the emotional mirror they used to validate their self-image, and now they're standing in front of their own truth without you to buffer it. The guilt, the manipulation, the lies, they all echo louder in solitude, because you were the calm they kept trying to corrupt, the empathy they kept taking advantage of, the good they didn't think they'd ever lose. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's exactly what's happening to them. Every thought they have of you now feels like a confrontation with themselves. They can't look at the silence without feeling the weight of their actions. It's like holding a mirror that refuses to flatter them. It doesn't bend or filter, it shows everything as it is. And what they see now isn't pretty. Your absence stripped away the fantasy. When you were explaining yourself, defending yourself, forgiving too easily, they thought they were strong. But now that you're gone, that false sense of power has collapsed. They're realizing that they didn't build love, they built dependency. They weren't leading the connection, they were feeding off your light. And once that light left the room, all that was left was their own shadow. That's why it hurts so much now. It's not your absence that's painful, it's their reflection. Imagine a person standing under a bright spotlight. The moment the light goes off, they can't see anything. That's what your departure did. It took away the light they depended on to see themselves clearly. They're stumbling now, tripping over their own insecurities, blaming the dark instead of admitting they were never strong enough to walk without you guiding them. And here's the irony, folks. They used to tell you that you were too emotional, too deep, too sensitive. But those very qualities they mocked are now haunting them. Because when you left, you took emotional depth with you. Now their conversations feel empty. Their new connections feel shallow. They crave that emotional mirror you provided, the one that made them feel seen even when they were hiding. And they hate that they can't recreate it. But understand this, you didn't leave to teach them a lesson, you left to protect your peace. The lesson was just the natural consequence. You became the silence that made them reflect. And reflection is painful for those who've spent their lives running from themselves. They're finally feeling what you felt, the sting of not being understood, the ache of realizing they were the problem all along. It's a strange kind of justice, isn't it? You didn't wish them pain, but life has a way of balancing the scales. The same absence that healed you is now healing them, but through discomfort. Your stillness became their mirror, and the truth it shows can't be denied. It's not revenge, it's reality catching up. So don't break your silence out of pity. Don't step back in just because they suddenly miss you. Missing you is easy. Becoming worthy of you is the real challenge. And that's what your absence is doing now. It's forcing them to grow or to finally admit they never will. Take a breath, folks. This is where your power lives, in being able to walk away with grace while their conscience does the talking for you. You don't have to remind them of who you were. They see it now every time they close their eyes. Write this in the comments to anchor your strength. My absence revealed the truth. Because it did. It showed them who they are and reminded you who you've always been, the calm after their storm, the reflection they could never escape, and the light that never needed their validation to shine. Number 4. They tried to replace you, but no one could match your frequency. They tried to replace you, my friends, but deep down, you and I both know that never really works. They went searching for you in other people, trying to copy what can't be copied. It's human nature. When people lose something rare, they scramble to fill the space before they realize how empty it really feels. They thought a new face, a few distractions, or another voice could silence the echo you left behind. But every replacement has turned into a painful reminder that your energy was one of a kind. They didn't lose attention, they lost alignment. And no matter how many faces they see, none can match your frequency. Here's the truth. When you have depth, you spoil shallow people for ordinary experiences. They can't go back to surface-level connections once they've felt your presence. You weren't loud, but your energy had weight. You made conversations meaningful. You made silence peaceful. And now everything feels offbeat to them, like listening to a song where the rhythm never quite lands. That's what happens when someone tries to replace energy. They can imitate the look, but never the vibration. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. You transformed them, even if they won't admit it. Your presence touched something deeper than they were ready for. That's why they couldn't handle you, but now can't forget you either. The calm you carried, the way your energy felt safe but mysterious, it left an imprint. So now, no matter who they meet, they end up comparing that person to you. Not consciously at first, but it happens quietly. The tone of their new partner's voice, the way they text, the things they laugh at, it all gets measured against you. And that comparison never ends in satisfaction. Let's be honest, when they first lost you, they tried to prove they didn't care. Maybe they posted more, went out more, surrounded themselves with people, trying to convince everyone they'd moved on. But the truth is, distraction is not healing. It's denial wearing confidence as a mask. And every time they try to use someone new as a bandage, the wound underneath only bleeds more. Because those new connections can't give them what you did. You didn't just give attention, you gave presence, you listened, you understood things they didn't even say. And now every new person feels like a stranger trying to mimic a memory. There's something haunting about losing someone whose energy was genuine. It lingers, it follows them like a scent that won't wash away. They can try to forget, but certain things, like your tone, your patience, your calm, come back in quiet moments. When the crowd leaves, when the music stops, when they're alone scrolling through their phone, that's when it hits them. What they had with you wasn't ordinary. It was grounding. It was real. And real things don't fade just because someone tries to replace them. But don't misunderstand this. They're not just missing you because you're gone. They're missing the version of themselves they were around you. You made them feel seen, capable, grounded. You reminded them of who they wanted to be. And that's the part no replacement can ever bring back. Because you didn't just touch their emotions, you touched their evolution. You helped them see a higher version of themselves, and once someone experiences that kind of energy, everything else feels like static. So, while they're out there pretending to be fine, their subconscious is comparing every new connection to you. And deep inside, they know the truth. They'll never find that same emotional frequency again. You were the calm in their storm, and they traded that for noise. You were the depth in their surface life, and they replaced it with distraction. You were the peace they didn't know they needed until it was gone. But that's not your burden to carry anymore. Let them learn through contrast. Let them see what love without depth really feels like, because soon they'll realize that peace isn't found in having company. It's found in connection, and that's something only you ever gave them. Take a breath, folks. You're not the one who lost anything. They are. They tried to replace you because it was easier than facing what they did to lose you. But what you have can't be replaced. It can only be remembered. And trust me, they'll remember. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one quiet night when the noise dies down, they'll feel your absence humming beneath their skin, and they'll know they can't escape it. Write this in the comments to ground your truth. I can't be replaced, because that's your reality. You were never an option. They just didn't recognize the gift while they had it. And now your silence is reminding them every day that your frequency was once in a lifetime. Number 5. Psychology proves the more you ignore, the more they crave. It's strange how the human mind works, my friends. The very moment you stop giving attention, the same person who once took it for granted starts craving it like oxygen. Psychology proves it. When someone is denied validation, when they can't predict your response anymore, their brain lights up with activity. Dopamine, the same chemical responsible for pleasure and motivation, begins to spike. It's the same mechanism that keeps people addicted to gambling, social media, or even toxic relationships, the unpredictability. They don't know when or if you'll respond, and that uncertainty keeps them hooked. You didn't realize it then, but your silence became their strongest drug. Think about it. When you used to reply fast, explain yourself, and always show up, they got comfortable. You became predictable, available, and emotionally accessible. Their brain categorized you as safe, and with safety came boredom. But the moment you withdrew your attention, everything flipped. Suddenly, their brain started asking, why did they stop? What changed? Did I lose them? And each unanswered question fed their curiosity, turning into emotional hunger. The less you gave, the more they wanted. It's basic human psychology. People crave what they can't control. When they had access to you, they didn't value it. But now your silence has created scarcity, and scarcity increases desire. Their brain begins chasing the high of your presence, the same way it used to chase likes or approval. They replay old conversations, scroll through your photos, and stalk your online activity just to get a tiny spark of that old dopamine rush. You've become their emotional slot machine. They keep pulling the lever, hoping for a hit that never comes. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That's what your silence has done. It's forced them to face the emptiness they used to hide behind your attention. They thought they were strong, but now they're realizing how much your energy stabilized their emotions. The more you ignore, the more their subconscious starts connecting pleasure to your presence and pain to your absence. That's addiction forming, not by manipulation, but by emotional truth. You simply stepped back and allowed their own mind to do the work. Let's break this down further. In psychology, it's called intermittent reinforcement. When attention or affection is unpredictable, it makes the receiver more attached, not less. That's why gamblers keep betting even when they lose, and why people chase those who pull away. Your silence has created that same dynamic. It's not cruelty, it's chemistry. And now, the same person who once ignored your texts is overanalyzing your silence, waiting for the smallest sign of acknowledgement. But here's the beautiful twist. You didn't do it to manipulate them. You did it to heal. You stepped away to reclaim your balance, and in doing so, you unknowingly rewired the connection. You took the power back from their ego and placed it back where it belongs, with you. That's the moment the craving began. They're not addicted to you because you're gone. They're addicted because, for the first time, they can't own you. You've become the mystery their mind can't solve, and that mystery burns hotter than any argument or apology ever could. And yes, they might pretend they're fine. They'll act like your silence doesn't affect them. But the truth, they feel it every single day. When you ignore someone who once fed on your energy, you starve their ego, not their heart. And that ego, oh, it's hungry, it's restless, it needs to be seen, and the fact that you won't look its way is slowly undoing everything it believed about itself. So hold your silence steady. Let them crave, let them wonder, let their own mind do what time never could. Show them that losing you wasn't just losing attention, it was losing peace, validation, and emotional safety. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. Their obsession already does that for you. Take this moment to remind yourself who you are. You're not running away. You're standing still while they chase their own reflection. That's the kind of power you earn only when you stop reacting and start observing. Write this in the comments to lock it into your energy. My silence rewired their mind. Because it did. You didn't chase them. You trained the universe to remind them what happens when they lose someone who was real. And that, my friends, is the sweetest kind of justice. Number 6. Now they're stalking you in shadows, seeking closure they'll never get. Now they're lurking in the background, my friends, silently watching, secretly hoping to find some piece of you that still belongs to them. They scroll through your old photos, reading between captions that were never meant for them. They play your voice in their head like a familiar song, trying to remember what peace used to sound like. They tell themselves they've moved on, but their actions expose the truth. They're still orbiting around your silence, still haunted by what they lost. You became their unsolved mystery, and human nature can't stand what it can't understand. See, closure is a luxury people think they're entitled to. But most of the time, closure never comes from someone else. It comes from acceptance. They're not ready for that. They want answers, validation, a reason that makes them feel innocent again. But your silence denies them all of it. You left without explaining, without a final word, without giving them the satisfaction of knowing why. And that unknown is eating away at them. Because the mind can live with pain, but not with uncertainty. They thought they could just move on easily. Maybe they even bragged about it, saying things like, "I'm fine," or "It didn't matter that much." But now that the silence has settled, those words taste like lies. Every night, their mind wanders back to you. They wonder if you've forgotten them, or if you still think of them sometimes. They're searching for clues, trying to connect dots that no longer exist. That's what happens when someone plays games with a genuine heart. They end up chasing ghosts of their own making. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." Right now, they're living in that exact space. They don't realize it. But they're chasing closure, not from you, but from their own guilt. They want to understand how they could treat someone so real with so little care. They want to know if they were ever truly loved, or if they were just a lesson in your story. But the truth, my friends, is they'll never find that answer. Because the moment you walked away, the chapter closed for good. Think of it like this. You were a light that used to guide them, but they played too long in the shadows. Now that you're gone, their world feels darker, colder, harder to navigate. They keep looking for your glow in other people, but every reflection feels dim. Every spark fades too quickly. It's like trying to warm themselves with the memory of fire. You can feel the idea of it, but not the heat. That's what your absence has become, an unfillable void. And yes, they're watching you, quietly. They might not follow you openly, but they're checking. They're observing your growth, your glow-up, your peace. And the hardest part for them, you don't seem affected. You're not posting heartbreak or bitterness. You're calm, focused, living life like someone who has nothing to prove. That's what kills them, because the story they told themselves about you, the one where you were the weak one, the emotional one, has completely fallen apart. Your silence shattered that illusion, and now they're stuck trying to make sense of how you became the one who won the psychological war by saying nothing at all. But you see, folks, closure isn't something they get to have anymore. They burned that bridge when they played with your peace. The silence they hate now is the same silence they once forced on you. Life has a way of balancing energy, and now they're feeling what they made you feel: uncertainty, doubt, and that quiet ache that never fully leaves. So don't be fooled by their silence. It's not strength, it's surveillance. They're still watching because they still care. They still crave your energy, even if their pride won't let them admit it. And deep down, they know the truth. They'll never get another version of you. The connection, the energy, the trust, it's gone. What remains are the shadows, and that's where they'll stay, chasing the memory of a light they extinguished themselves. Take a deep breath, my friends, and remind yourself, you're not being watched because you're weak. You're being watched because you became unforgettable. You moved on in peace while they got stuck in obsession. That's the price of mishandling someone real. Write this in the comments to claim your strength. They can watch, but they can't reach me. Because they can't, you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed closure. You've become the peace that haunts their chaos. And no matter how much they search, they'll never find that calm again. Number 7. They finally realize you were the peace they traded for chaos. They finally see it now, my friends. You were the peace they traded for chaos. Back then, they didn't understand that real love isn't about constant excitement. It's about stability, safety, and silence that feels like home. They wanted thrill over tranquility, drama over depth, noise over nurture. And now that they've drowned in all that noise, they're realizing what they lost. You were their calm, the quiet in the storm, the steady hand when everything else was falling apart. But they confused peace with boredom. They thought stillness meant lack of passion. Now they're learning that chaos might feel thrilling for a moment, but it never feels safe for long. At first, they believed the better option would fix the emptiness they felt inside. Someone new, someone different, someone who could distract them from the guilt of losing you. But you can't replace peace with distraction. It's like trying to cure thirst with salt water. The more they drank, the worse it got. Their new connections are loud but hollow, full of noise but lacking substance. Every argument, every cold silence, every fake laugh reminds them of what they used to have with you: effortless calm. Your energy wasn't demanding, it was grounding. You didn't compete for attention, you brought clarity to confusion. But they only recognize that now, when your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. Carl Jung once said, "People don't have ideas, ideas have people." The idea that something better existed took hold of them. It controlled their choices. They chased illusion over intention, and now the same fantasy that blinded them has turned on them. They thought peace was too quiet, too predictable, but now they lie awake at night, missing the simplicity of your energy, realizing that drama might fill time, but it empties the soul. You were never the problem. You were the pause in their chaos, the deep breath between storms. Think of it this way, folks. You were like a still lake, clear, calm, reflecting back their truth. But they wanted waves. They wanted excitement. So they went searching for oceans, thinking bigger was better. Now they're caught in a tide that won't stop pulling them under. And what do people crave when they're drowning? Calm water. That's you. You were the peace that helped them breathe. They didn't see it when they had it, but they feel it now. Every moment they're surrounded by people who talk louder, demand more, and love less. Here's the truth most can't admit. Peace exposes who we really are, while chaos distracts us from it. When they were with you, they had to sit with their reflection. You made them feel safe enough to be vulnerable. But that same safety made them face their flaws, and they weren't ready. So they called it boring, not realizing it was healing. They walked away thinking excitement meant connection, but now they see. Peace was the rarest form of love they'll ever find. And what's haunting them now isn't just your silence, it's the memory of how they felt around you. Calm, balanced, seen. Their nervous system misses you more than their heart does. Their mind misses how light it felt when they didn't have to pretend. Every new face only reminds them how easy it used to be when they were with you. You didn't compete for their attention. You gave them rest from the noise of their own mind. So let them sit with that realization. Let them live in the chaos they chose. You don't need to say, "I told you so." Life already said it for you. They're learning the hard way that peace doesn't chase and calm doesn't beg. When peace leaves, everything feels loud, everything feels wrong, and nothing feels like home anymore. You, my friends, are that home. You're the calm after the storm, the silence that speaks truth, the energy that doesn't have to perform to be powerful. You were never missing anything. They were, and now they finally know it. Write this in the comments to remind yourself who you are. I was their peace. Say it with confidence, because you were the rare stillness they couldn't appreciate until they lost it. You were the calm they tried to replace with chaos, and that's something they'll never find again. Number 8, they'll come back, not because you need them, but because silence always wins. They'll come back, my friends, not because you begged, chased, or explained, but because your silence changed everything. The same quiet they mistook for weakness became the very thing that exposed their own emptiness. You see, people never forget the ones who walked away calmly. Anger fades, words get blurred. But silence, that lingers. It echoes in the corners of the mind where pride can't reach. Your stillness flipped the script. The one who once felt small is now the one they can't stop thinking about. That's the power of letting go with grace. You let the universe do what words never could. It always happens like this. The comeback doesn't come when you want it. It comes when you've stopped needing it, when your peace becomes louder than your pain, when you no longer care if they remember, because you've already remembered who you are. That's when they feel it, the pull, the regret, the sudden wave of realization that they lost someone who was solid in a world full of temporary people. Your silence became a mirror, and now they can't stand what they see without you in the reflection. Psychologically, it makes perfect sense. When someone loses control over how you feel, their mind starts seeking ways to get that control back. That's why they resurface. They'll show up with a message, a memory, a question that doesn't need answering, anything to test if the door's still open. But you're different now. You've outgrown the need to be understood. You've evolved into a kind of calm that can't be manipulated. And that calm, that quiet strength is magnetic. It draws them back, not through desperation, but through contrast. Because now they see how peaceful your energy always was compared to the chaos they chased. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." Right now, they're calling it fate. They think it's coincidence that they're missing you, that they keep bumping into reminders of you, that your name still stings when they hear it. But it's not fate. It's their subconscious showing them what they ignored. The universe is teaching them your worth the hard way. They needed to feel the silence to understand the sound of your presence. Picture it like this. You were a warm fire, steady and giving light, but they got too close and complained about the heat. So they left. Now they're out in the cold, and suddenly that same warmth doesn't feel suffocating. It feels sacred. They thought they'd find better, but instead they found empty conversations, shallow energy, and constant noise. They thought leaving you meant freedom. Instead, it became a quiet kind of prison where every memory of you knocks a little louder. And here's the truth. When they come back, it won't be because they've changed overnight. It'll be because your silence exposed something they can't ignore anymore. You were peace disguised as a person, and now they crave what they once rejected. But don't confuse their return for your validation. Their regret is proof enough. The universe already balanced the scales. You don't need to reopen what peace has already closed. So if that message pops up, if that name reappears, smile. Not out of bitterness, but awareness. You don't need to chase what's already circling back. You've become gravity now. You attract through stillness, not effort. You've mastered the art of letting silence speak for you, and silence always wins, because it never begs to be believed. They'll come back, my friends. They always do. But by the time they do, you'll be too grounded to fall for the same story. You'll see it for what it is. Recognition, not reconciliation. Proof, not partnership. Your silence already did the work. Now write this in the comments and claim your power. My silence always wins, because it does. You've proven that peace doesn't chase chaos, it lets chaos destroy itself. And when the dust settles, it's always silence that remains standing.